All right, guys, Juan here with the Cole Firm. All right, cost plus, price per square foot. What's the difference? Pros and cons. Well, let's talk about price per square foot. I get a lot of clients that call me every day. Hey, what are you billing for price per square foot? Well, depends, you know. Especially if you're doing a steel building, that's easy to give. A steel building kit, well, it can range anywhere from $22 a square foot for the material to $35 a square foot for material, whether it's cold form or red iron. For erection, it's $10 to $20 a square foot, depends on where you're building, location, and so forth for labor. Okay. Now, when you're building a home, there's 1,000 variables, guys. So price per square foot can range anywhere typically from $140, $150 per square foot finished to $300, $400 a square foot finished. So if you calculate basically 1,000 square foot times $200 a square foot, that's 200,000. Okay. If it's 1,000 square foot build times $300 square foot with really nice finishes, and you're building in Miami, the price of labor cost is higher in Florida. It's one of the highest areas to build because everyone's got to be licensed and compliant. It means everyone's got to be legal that builds your house in Florida. If not, your general contractor will lose their license. Okay, so everything's got to be in compliance. And other states are more lenient with a lot of other different laws, labor laws, and so forth. Okay, so that's just how the industry works. Don't kill the messenger. It is what it is. Labor costs typically in living expenses, cost of living. If you look at your cost of living, Florida is expensive, New York's expensive, California is real expensive. Your cost of living in Texas is cheap. Cost of living in South Carolina is cheap. Georgia's cheaper, right? Tennessee's cheaper. So it depends where you're building. If you're up in the mountains, right, your cost per square foot is gonna be a lot higher because your subcontractor, your electrician's got to drive 2 hours up a mountain. You come down a mountain. You got to do that multiple times. So he's going to charge you more, which is going to ultimately, all the subcontractors like the electrician, your plumber, you're an HVAC guy, your concrete guy, your steel erectors, your insulation guy, your flooring crew, your guys you're putting in your cabinets, right? Installers. Let's go. Your finishing crew, your sheetrock team, your framers, your painters. They're all going to charge you more money because if they got to go up a mountain 2 hours up, and it's very remote, 2 hours back, it's going to cost them a lot of money. So you got to count drive time. So typically subcontractors work within a 50-mile radius. Typically residential home builders do too. They try to stay within a 50-mile radius. It doesn't make any sense for them to drive 3 hours to go here to make $100,000 when they can make $100,000 within 20 miles of their doorstep. Okay, so you have to be mindful of what you're getting yourself to. Cost per square foot, builders can hide their fees. They can hide their costs, their markups, and you don't know that. They can hide that information and they don't disclose that. It's not fully truthful. It's all what they call bake it into the cake, which is fine. Then we have what you call cost plus. So homeowners, you need to be asking the question, what's your cost plus? Cost plus means how much does the material cost? How much does labor cost? And then general contractor or the licensed builder or the building group will make a markup. 25, 30%, 35%. That's what they're making on top of materials and labor. They're being very transparent, very truthful, very honest. That's what you should be asking, what's your cost plus? Asking them price per square foot, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot because you're not asking the right questions. What's your cost per square foot is going to give you a truthful answer from a builder. And builder says 25%, 30%. You know, basically the builder is literally at the mercy of their subcontractors. So if your materials cost a lot of money, that's because you chose expensive materials. If your materials are cost effective and then typically that's going to, if you have what you call a champagne taste, then you need to have a champagne wallet. If you're I want cost effectiveness, then you need to have a cost effective budget. So everything's got to be logical. So as long as you're logical, you're down to earth, and you ask the right questions, what's your cost plus? asking cost per square foot is such pie in the sky. So it's not a truthful or transparent question. So it's not the right question to ask builders, okay? Because you gotta realize there's 32 line items that builder's gotta go through, and how much does it cost for, you don't go to an electrician and say, how much does it cost for materials for, how much does it cost? Typically electricians and plumbers, they're gonna pull the materials and they're gonna have a time frame, how long does it take to get that build done, right? Electricians say, okay, this is gonna be a three-day job to wire that house, right? You got a hard wire, and then you got to finish. You got your finishes, right? So same thing with a plumber. He's got his rough-in plumbing, then he's got to go in and tie everything in. So they got a cost for materials, cost for labor, in every single trade. So this is a lot more. There's a lot of moving parts. So to keep the math simple, so you know exactly what you're paying the general contractor, and you're paying for access to all the subcontractors. You're also getting access to his license. Builders, his or her license has a ton of value. That means if you're financing a build, anything goes wrong, subcontractor comes in, say that the steel erection crew comes in and they take the money and run, right? They go off and run off to Mexico, they run off to Colorado, they run off to New York or Florida. That builder is liable legally and financially for that money. Now, if you're a homeowner and you don't have a lot of construction experience, and I know a guy that puts up buildings, you can get them online on Facebook, and comes there and you give him $20,000 and he takes off. Guess what? You're never gonna find that guy again. The builders have a very close bond and relationship with the subcontractors, and they choose and pick their subcontractors. And they say, if you can make it for the first 3 years without going bankrupt as a builder, then you've gone over that hump because you got your trusted, qualified subcontractors. So unfortunately, there's clients in the building world who, after contractors do the work, they don't want to pay. So now you're running the risk of being a lien on your property, and you get into legal battles when people sign contracts, right, for agreements, and they breach those contracts. It becomes a mess, a legal liability. So at the end of the day, we want to be very truthful, very honest, and literally walk you through the steps of the process. We'll help you through the process from the planning, design, and engineering, so that when you build with our builders, we're going to give you a cost plus, full transparency what you're paying, okay? We're not going to get a price per square foot, because that is not the proper way and a proper question to be asking when you're building a home from start to finish. There's too many variables, especially when people want to have their own types of finishes and their own products, and they pick out their own colors. There's a lot of detailing that goes into this. Now, when we build, it's all custom, okay? We're not a spec home builder. The difference between a spec home builder is they have 4 floor plans, like Ryan Homes and the rest of them, and it's great, but they'll rip out 100 homes, you know? When I bought my home in Texas, they had 5 floor plans to choose from. And they build a whole apartment, they build a whole subdivision full of them, and they're building at, say, $120 square foot. Well, a custom home builder is not gonna build for that. It not even come close, because it's custom. And when you're building on your own farm and your own ranch, and you're doing it your style, you're designing this build out, it's gonna be a total different experience than you just go in there and, you know, you're not asking, when you buy a home, you're not asking what's behind the sheetrock. You probably should, but you know, spec homers build very cost effectively. They build the cheapest product and build as fast as they can. That's how they turn their money over. That's a spec home. When you're building a custom home, that's a whole different beast, okay? So you cannot compare a manufactured home, a Champion home or Clank home, with a custom barn and that's made out of steel. That is totally two different. That's like comparing a Ferrari with a used Toyota or a used Ford Escape. They're both cars. They both have wheels. One's $500,000. One is $4,500. They both get you from A to B, but they're not the same product whatsoever. Okay, so you guys need to know that cost plus versus price per square foot can be very deceptive. That only works when you're just buying a product, standalone product. Like steel, I know exactly what steel, cold form steel is. We're sitting at cold form steel. We're looking around $21, $22, $23 per square foot for that product, roughly. Okay, until we don't know until we get the design and the engineering. When it comes to steel erection, I know price per square foot, $9, $10, $15, $20 per square foot, depends on location. My guys got to go down to Miami. It's a whole different labor pool down there. It's a whole different cost. If we're going to Wyoming for a project, that's going to be a different fee for travel. Everything costs money. Fuel costs money. And so these things you have to take into consideration. And typically these quotes are good for 30 days. I just had a friend of mine. He got a steel quote for steel. Sent over a check for $163,000. They sent the money right back. Okay, I said, nope. The new proposal is now $213,000 because of tariffs. Tariffs in the industry, the micro and macroeconomics affects everybody, everything in this world. You can't get away from it. So as long as you're buying a product, as long as you're buying people's services, things fluctuate. So you guys need to know that once you get an estimate, typically estimates given by a building group such as ourselves are good typically only for 30 days tops, and that's it. And then it's not good again. Then typically it takes 3, 4, or 5 weeks to get estimates out. You can't just rip out, because if you're doing custom homes, you gotta sit down with clients and ask what they want and be very detailed, because if you miss out on something, then everyone's not happy. So we want to make sure that you guys are asking the right questions. What is your cost plus versus what is your price per square foot? My name is Juan. I'm a veteran, served 15 and a half years active duty military, 2 tours in Iraq. Love being a chaplain, love serving people, love helping people. Check us on the web at coltfirm.com, and we love doing your business. God bless you guys.